Fiona's voice had been urgent over the phone that morning. "Vivian, come meet me for coffee right now. It's important." The tremor in her tone made my stomach clench. My sister never called before 9 in the morning unless something was terribly wrong. I made excuses to Lawrence about needing to help Fiona with some errands. He barely looked up from his breakfast, nodding absently as he scrolled through emails on his phone. After 27 years of marriage, this had become our routine. Ships passing in the harbor of our kitchen, exchanging the bare minimum of information needed to keep our household functioning. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Fiona sat in the corner booth, her fingers drumming nervously against her coffee mug. She looked terrible. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, dark circles shadowing her eyes. "What's going on?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't," she admitted, her voice low. "Not since yesterday afternoon when I saw something I shouldn't have." Saw what?" My heart rate quickened. Fiona and I had always been close, sharing everything from childhood secrets to adult disappointments. But something in her expression told me this was different. This was dangerous. "When your husband is at work, check what's hidden behind the mirror in your bathroom." The words tumbled out in a rush. I blinked at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" "There's nothing behind our bathroom mirror except the medicine cabinet." Not the medicine cabinet, the decorative mirror on the south wall, the heavy one with the ornate frame. "How do you even know about that mirror?" "You've never been in our master bathroom." Fiona's eyes darted away. "I was there yesterday. Lawrence invited me over." "Lawrence invited you to our house? While I was at my book club?" The strangeness of this statement hung between us. Lawrence and Fiona had always maintained a polite but distant relationship. They tolerated each other for my sake, but never sought out each other's company. "Please, Viv, just look behind the mirror. I can't tell you more than that." She reached across the table and gripped my hand with surprising strength. "You'll understand once you see it." I pulled my hand away, irritation mixing with growing unease. "This is ridiculous. If you know something about Lawrence, just tell me." "I can't." Her voice cracked. "It's not my place." "But you need to know. Please just check behind the mirror." I stared at my sister, trying to read the truth in her face. Fiona had never been one for dramatics or games. Whatever she'd seen had genuinely disturbed her. "Fine," I said finally. "I'll look." "But you're being incredibly cryptic, and I don't appreciate it." "Call me after," was all she said. The house was silent when I returned. Lawrence had left for work, his coffee mug rinsed and placed in the dishwasher. Everything was in its place, exactly as it always was. Our home ran with the precision of a Swiss watch, each item carefully positioned, each routine followed with exacting detail. It was one of the things I'd always appreciated about Lawrence. His methodical nature complemented my more scattered approach to life. I stood in the doorway of our bathroom, staring at the mirror in question. It had been a wedding gift from Lawrence's parents, a beautiful antique with an ornately carved wooden frame. It had hung on the same wall for over 20 years, witnessing our morning routines, our evening rituals, the slow transformation of our bodies from young to middle-aged. What could possibly be behind it that would cause Fiona such distress? With trembling hands, I lifted the mirror from its hooks. It was heavier than I remembered, and I carefully set it on the tiled floor. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just the faded wallpaper that had been protected from sunlight all these years. But then I noticed it, a small depression in the wall with something metallic gleaming inside. I reached in and pulled out a USB flash drive. It was unmarked, just a standard black plastic case with a metal connector. Nothing special or distinctive about it. My laptop sat on the bedroom desk. I plugged in the drive, my finger hovering over the trackpad. Did I really want to see what was on this? What secret was Lawrence keeping that required hiding a flash drive behind a mirror? I clicked open the drive and froze in fear as the contents appeared on my screen. Hundreds of files, meticulously organized into folders with dates spanning back 15 years. I clicked on the most recent folder, dated just last month. Financial statements, bank accounts I'd never seen before, property deeds for houses in 3 different states, none in our name, passport scans, not just Lawrence's passport, but 3 others with his photo and different names, birth certificates, marriage certificates. My hands shook as I opened document after document. The truth was there in cold digital ink. Lawrence Thorne, my husband of 27 years, the father of my children, the man I'd built a life with, was not who I thought he was. He had other homes, other bank accounts, other identities, and most devastatingly, another family. Photos appeared on my screen. Lawrence with a woman I'd never seen. Lawrence with children who had his eyes, his smile. Holiday gatherings, birthday parties, beach vacations. An entire parallel life documented with the same meticulous attention to detail that characterized everything Lawrence did. I don't know how long I sat there, scrolling through the evidence of my husband's betrayal. The sun had shifted in the sky, afternoon light streaming through the windows when I finally closed the laptop. My mind felt oddly calm, disconnected from the hurricane of emotions swirling beneath the surface. I picked up my phone and called Fiona. "You found it," she said when she answered. Not a question, but a statement. "Yes." My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "How did you know it was there?" Silence stretched between us. When Fiona finally spoke, her voice was heavy with regret. "Lawrence has been having an affair with my best friend Marcella for the past year. I only found out last week when I stopped by her house unexpectedly and found them together. He had the flash drive with him. When he went to the bathroom, Marcella told me everything, how he'd been confiding in her, how he was planning to leave soon. She seemed to think I already knew about his other lives." "Other lives," I repeated, "not just other women." "Entire other families, Fiona." "I know. Marcella showed me some of the photos. When Lawrence came back and found us looking at his files, he panicked. He made all sorts of promises about explaining everything, about how it wasn't what it looked like. He begged me not to tell you until he had a chance to get his story straight." "And you agreed?" Betrayal cut fresh and deep. "No, I told him he had 48 hours to tell you himself, or I would. But then yesterday, he invited me over. Said he wanted to show me that he'd ended things with Marcella, that he was recommitting to you. But it was all a ruse to get me to your house. He wanted to know if Marcella had made copies of any files. When I admitted she had, he became terrified. That's when I noticed him hiding something behind the mirror. After he left the room, I checked and saw the flash drive. The pieces were falling into place. So you called me this morning because his 48 hours were almost up." "Yes. I couldn't sleep knowing what he was hiding from you, knowing he might be planning to disappear at any moment. Disappear." The word echoed in my mind. All those business trips over the years, the weeks when communication was spotty due to poor reception. Had he been with his other families during those times? How had he maintained these separate lives for so long without any of us discovering each other? "What are you going to do?" Fiona asked. I looked around the bedroom I'd shared with Lawrence for nearly 3 decades. The carefully coordinated furnishings, the family photos on the dresser, the stack of historical novels on his nightstand, everything so normal, so false. "I don't know yet," I said truthfully, "but I need to think. I'll call you later." I hung up and sat in silence, trying to reconcile the Lawrence I knew with the man revealed by the files on that flash drive. My husband was a financial advisor with his own successful practice. He managed our investments, our retirement accounts, our children's college funds. He handled all our major financial decisions with confident expertise that I'd always trusted implicitly. How much of our life together was real? Were our own bank accounts even legitimate? Or had he been siphoning money away for years to support his other households? The thought of our children sent a fresh wave of pain through me. Camille and Preston had always adored their father. What would this do to them? Camille was expecting our first grandchild in just 3 months. Preston was following in his father's footsteps, working toward his own financial advising license. Their world would shatter just as completely as mine had. I copied the entire contents of the flash drive onto my own computer before returning it exactly where I'd found it behind the mirror. Then I began to dig deeper, looking for answers, trying to understand the scope of Lawrence's deception. The more I searched, the more horrified I became. According to the documents, Lawrence maintained 3 separate identities in addition to the one I knew. In Seattle, he was Lawrence Thornhill, married to a woman named Diana with 2 teenage children. In Phoenix, he was Lars Thompson, married to Elena with 1 daughter in college. And in Boston, he was Louis Thorpe, married to Catherine with no children but an elderly mother-in-law who lived with them. Each family had its own home, its own bank accounts, its own history documented through financial records and photographs. Each believed they were married to a financial advisor who traveled frequently for work. Each had no idea the others existed. How had he managed the logistics of maintaining 4 separate lives? The travel alone would be exhausting, not to mention keeping track of all the details, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the family dynamics. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. And then I found something that chilled me to the bone. In a folder labeled Exit Strategy, I discovered detailed plans for disappearing completely. New identities prepared for quick escape, accounts in countries with no extradition treaties, property purchased under shell companies. Lawrence wasn't just living multiple lives. He was prepared to abandon them all at a moment's notice. The question was, why? What was he running from? Or running toward? I was still searching for answers when I heard the garage door open. Lawrence was home, hours earlier than expected. I quickly closed my laptop and tried to compose myself, heart hammering against my ribs. He appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You're in my office," he observed, his voice carefully neutral. "I needed to check our vacation dates," I lied, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "Camille wanted to know when we're available to visit after the baby comes." "Ah," he nodded, setting his briefcase on the desk. "Did you find what you needed?" "Yes, all set." I stood up, painfully aware of the flash drive's contents now copied onto the very laptop I was holding. "You're home early." "Client canceled." He loosened his tie, watching me with eyes that suddenly seemed like a stranger's. Had they always held that calculating gleam? How had I never noticed before? "Everything okay?" "You look a bit flushed. Just a headache coming on. I think I'll lie down for a bit." I needed to escape his presence before I screamed or collapsed or did something that would reveal what I knew. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face, his fingers lingering on my cheek. The familiar gesture now felt like a violation. Poor Viv. "Take some aspirin. I'll handle dinner tonight." I nodded and slipped past him, fighting the urge to recoil from his touch. In our bedroom, I closed the door and leaned against it, trying to control my breathing. The man in the other room was a stranger, a dangerous stranger who had been sleeping beside me for 27 years. My phone buzzed with a text from Fiona. "Did you find it? Are you okay?" I typed back, "Yes, he's home early. Call you later." Then I erased the messages and deleted them from my recently deleted folder as well. If Lawrence was as thorough as the flash drive suggested, he might check my phone. I couldn't risk him discovering that I knew. I took a shower, letting the hot water wash over me as I tried to think. What should I do? Confront him? Go to the police? But what crime could I report? Being married to multiple women in different states was illegal, certainly, but was that really the extent of it? The elaborate escape plans suggested something more sinister than just polygamy. By the time I emerged from the bathroom, I had decided on my immediate course of action. I needed to protect myself financially before doing anything else. If Lawrence suspected I'd discovered his secret, he might empty our accounts and disappear with his well-prepared exit strategy. Lawrence was in the kitchen, preparing dinner as promised. The domestic normality of the scene was surreal after what I'd discovered. "Feeling better?" he asked, glancing up from the vegetables he was chopping. "A little." The shower helped. I forced a smile. "I think I might drive over to Camille's for a bit, though." She texted asking for help with some baby room organization. "Now?" "I'm making your favorite pasta." "I know, I'm sorry." Mother-daughter stuff, you understand. I grabbed my purse, trying to appear casual. "Save me some?" "I shouldn't be too late." He studied me for a moment, his knife poised over a half-sliced bell pepper. "You've been acting strange since I got home." "Are you sure everything's all right?" "Of course." I stepped forward and pressed a kiss to his cheek, fighting back nausea. Just pregnancy nesting urgency. You know how Camille gets when she wants something done immediately. He nodded slowly. "Give her my love." "I will." I headed for the door, skin crawling with the knowledge that his eyes were following me. Had he noticed something different in my behavior? Did he suspect I knew? I drove aimlessly for 20 minutes, my thoughts churning. I couldn't go to Camille. I couldn't bear to tell her what I discovered. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. Not until I understood the full scope of Lawrence's deception. Instead, I parked at a small public library several towns over, where I was unlikely to run into anyone who knew me. Using a public computer rather than my own device, I began researching Lawrence's other identities more thoroughly. Lawrence Thornhill had a LinkedIn profile showing a successful career as a financial advisor in Seattle. Lars Thompson appeared in Phoenix business directories. Lewis Thorpe was mentioned in Boston community newsletters. All three had digital footprints consistent with their supposed lives, but I couldn't find any presence for these identities before about 15 years ago. It was as if they had all sprung into existence simultaneously, fully formed. Even my own husband, the man I thought I'd known since college, had a strangely limited online history before that time. Something wasn't adding up. This wasn't just about a man who wanted multiple families. This was something else entirely. I was so absorbed in my research that I almost missed the text from Lawrence. Should I wait up? I glanced at the time, shocked to discover it was already past 9 o'clock. I'd been at the library for hours. "On my way home now," I texted back. "Camille says hi." The house was quiet when I returned. Lawrence was in bed, reading one of his historical novels. He looked up when I entered the bedroom, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. Such a familiar sight, such a lie. "How's our girl?" he asked. Excited, nervous, the usual first-time mom stuff. I busied myself with my nighttime routine, afraid he would read the truth on my face. "And the baby's room? Coming along?" We moved furniture, debated paint colors. You know, each lie came more easily than the last, and I wondered if this was how it had been for him all these years, if deception became second nature after enough practice. I slid into bed beside him, maintaining the careful distance that had characterized our sleeping arrangements for years. Neither of us was much for cuddling in our sleep, a fact I'd always attributed to our desire for personal space. Now I wondered if it was because he was used to sleeping beside other women, if keeping his distance helped him keep his stories straight. "Good night, Viv." He turned off his reading lamp and settled onto his side, back toward me as usual. "Good night," I whispered to the stranger beside me. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake for hours, listening to Lawrence's steady breathing, wondering how many nights he had lain awake beside me, planning his next move, his next lie. Morning brought no clarity. Lawrence rose at his usual time, followed his usual routine. Shower, shave, dress, coffee and toast while checking emails on his phone, a kiss on my cheek before heading out the door to his office. The perfect picture of domestic predictability. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, I retrieved my laptop and continued my investigation. There had to be more to this story than just a man with multiple families. The elaborate escape plans, the careful financial arrangements, the complete identities created from nothing. It all pointed to something bigger, something darker. I decided to focus on the money. As a financial advisor, Lawrence had always managed our investments with impressive returns. I had never questioned his expertise or his methods. Now, I wondered if those returns were even real, or if they were part of an elaborate fiction designed to maintain my trust. I wasn't financially naive. I had worked as an administrative assistant in a law firm for 20 years before retiring 5 years ago. I understood basic financial principles, but Lawrence's world of investments and portfolios had always seemed unnecessarily complicated, and I had been content to let him handle those matters. Now I regretted my complacency. Our joint accounts appeared normal at first glance. Regular deposits from his business, expected expenditures for our lifestyle. But when I looked more closely at the statements from the past several years, I noticed small irregularities. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Investments in companies I'd never heard of. Nothing large enough to raise immediate concerns, but consistent enough to suggest a pattern. I began cross-referencing these transactions with the information from the flash drive. The accounts matched those associated with his other identities. Small amounts moving between families, building up over time. It wasn't just about maintaining separate households. It was about moving money through them. The realization hit me with stunning clarity. Lawrence wasn't just a bigamist. He was using his multiple identities to launder money. But whose money, and from what source? I needed professional help to understand what I was seeing. But who could I trust? Going to the police seemed premature without more information. What if I was wrong? What if there was some explanation that I was missing? I thought of Gerald McKenzie, a forensic accountant who had worked with my former law firm. We had maintained a friendly professional relationship over the years, occasionally running into each other at firm alumni events. If anyone could make sense of these financial records, it would be Gerald. I sent him a text asking if we could meet for lunch to discuss a sensitive financial matter. His response came quickly. "Of course." Callaway's at 1? Callaway's was a small cafe near his office, quiet and discreet, perfect for the conversation I needed to have. I spent the next few hours copying more files from Lawrence's home office, photographing documents, and gathering as much financial information as I could access. By the time I left to meet Gerald, I had compiled a substantial digital dossier of evidence. Gerald was already seated when I arrived, his silver hair and round glasses exactly as I remembered. He stood to greet me, his expression warm but concerned. "Vivian, it's been too long. Though I admit your message has me intrigued. What's this sensitive financial matter?" I glanced around the nearly empty cafe before leaning forward. "I need your absolute discretion, Gerald. What I'm about to share with you cannot go beyond this table." His expression turned serious. "You have it. Attorney-client privilege may not apply since I'm an accountant, not a lawyer, but I assure you complete confidentiality." I took a deep breath and began. "I recently discovered that my husband has been living multiple lives under different identities. He maintains separate households, in at least 3 other states, each with its own financial infrastructure. But it's more than just supporting multiple families. I believe he's using these identities to move money through a complex network of accounts. Gerald's professional composure slipped for just a moment, his eyebrows rising in surprise. That's not what I was expecting. Do you have evidence of this? I handed him a thumb drive containing the files I'd compiled. Everything I've found so far is here. Financial records, identity documents, property deeds. I'm not an expert, but something about the money movement doesn't look right to me. He pocketed the drive with a nod. I'll review these tonight. But, Vivian, if what you're suggesting is true, this could be extremely serious. Money laundering isn't just about hiding funds. It's about disguising their origin, which is often criminal. I know. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on me. That's why I came to you before going to the authorities. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Have you confronted your husband? No. I'm afraid of how he might react if he knows I've discovered his secret. The flash drive where I found most of this information included detailed plans for disappearing completely. New identities, offshore accounts, properties in non-extradition countries. Gerald's expression darkened. Then, you were right to be cautious. If he has exit plans this elaborate, he wouldn't hesitate to use them if threatened. Do you feel safe in your home? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. He's never been violent, but until yesterday, I would have said he'd never lie to me either. Consider staying elsewhere while we figure this out. A friend's house, a hotel. I can't. If I change my routine, he'll know something's wrong. Besides, I need access to his files, his office. There's still so much I don't understand. Gerald sighed but nodded. Very well. But promise me you'll be careful. Men with secrets this big can be unpredictable when cornered. I promise. I'll examine these files tonight and call you tomorrow. In the meantime, try to behave normally. Don't access anything unusual from your home computers or devices. Use public computers if you need to do more research. And Vivian, his voice grew grave, prepare yourself for the possibility that what I find may be worse than you imagine. I left our meeting with a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief at having shared my burden. Dread at what Gerald might discover. The man I'd married, the father of my children, the grandfather of my soon-to-be-born grandchild, was a stranger to me now. A phantom composed of lies and false identities. Who was Lawrence Thorne, really? And what would happen when his carefully constructed house of cards finally collapsed? I was about to find out whether I was ready or not. When I returned home, there was an unfamiliar car in our driveway, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows and rental plates. My stomach clenched with sudden fear. Had Lawrence's other lives somehow followed me home? I parked on the street and approached my own house with caution, keys clutched in my hand like a weapon. Through the front window, I could see Lawrence in the living room, speaking with a man in a dark suit. Their conversation appeared intense. Lawrence's normally composed expression replaced by something that looked almost like fear. I considered retreating, driving away until this unknown visitor left. But curiosity overcame caution. Who was this man, and what connection did he have to Lawrence's secret lives? Taking a deep breath, I walked through the front door as if nothing were amiss. Conversation halted abruptly as I entered. Both men turned to look at me, Lawrence's face quickly rearranging into a welcoming smile that didn't reach his eyes. Viv, you're home. I was just telling Mr. Reynolds here about our investment portfolio. The man called Reynolds stood and extended his hand. He was tall and lean, with the kind of nondescript features that would blend into any crowd. Mrs. Thorne, a pleasure. Your husband speaks very highly of you. I shook his hand. noting the firm grip and the calluses that seemed at odds with his polished appearance. "Are you a client?" "In a manner of speaking." His smile revealed nothing. "I'm considering entrusting your husband with some rather significant investments." How nice. I turned to Lawrence, searching his face for clues. "I'm surprised you didn't mention this meeting." "Last-minute arrangement," Lawrence said smoothly. "Mr. Reynolds was just passing through town and wanted to discuss options in person." "I won't keep your husband much longer," Reynolds assured me. "We've nearly concluded our business." "Don't mind me," I said, moving toward the stairs. "I'll be upstairs if you need anything." "Actually," Lawrence interjected, "would you mind making some coffee?" "Mr. Reynolds has a long drive ahead." "Of course." I smiled tightly and headed for the kitchen, where I made a show of preparing coffee while straining to overhear their conversation. Their voices were too low to distinguish words, but the tone was unmistakably tense. This was no ordinary client meeting. When I returned with the coffee tray, they were examining documents spread across the coffee table, which Lawrence quickly gathered up as I entered. "Perfect timing," he said. "We were just wrapping up." I served the coffee, noting how Reynolds took his cup with a hand that bore a small tattoo at the base of his thumb, a symbol I didn't recognize, partially hidden by his shirt cuff. "Mrs. Thorne," Reynolds said as he sipped his coffee, "your husband tells me you have a daughter expecting your first grandchild soon. Congratulations." "Thank you." The mention of Camille sent a chill through me. How much had Lawrence told this man about our family? A first grandchild is special, something to be protected at all costs, I imagine. His words hung in the air, loaded with meaning I couldn't decipher, but which made my skin crawl nonetheless. Was it a threat? An observation? The ambiguity itself felt menacing. "Yes," I managed to say, "we're very protective of our family." Reynolds smiled, a cold expression that transformed his unremarkable features into something predatory. "As you should be. Family is everything after all." He drained his cup and stood. "I should be going." "Thank you for the coffee, Mrs. Thorne." "And Lawrence, think carefully about our discussion. Time is of the essence." Lawrence escorted him to the door, their final words too quiet for me to hear. When he returned, his face was ashen. "Who was that, really?" I asked, unable to maintain my pretense of ignorance in the face of his obvious distress. "Just a potential client, like I said." He began gathering the coffee cups, his hands betraying a slight tremor. "High net worth individual. Very particular about his investments. He seemed to know a lot about our family. I must have mentioned Camille during our discussion. Building rapport, you know." I studied my husband's face, searching for the man I thought I'd married. "Is everything okay, Lawrence?" "You seem upset." "Fine. Just a headache coming on." He attempted a reassuring smile that looked more like a grimace. "Think I'll lie down for a bit before dinner." He disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts. Whatever business Reynolds had with Lawrence, it wasn't legitimate investment planning. The tension between them had been palpable, the veiled reference to protecting family unmistakably sinister. I pulled out my phone to text Gerald about this new development, then hesitated. Better to call from somewhere else. Somewhere Lawrence couldn't possibly overhear. I waited until Lawrence was in the shower before slipping out to pick up something for dinner. Once in my car, I drove to a nearby park and called Gerald from a bench overlooking a small pond. "Vivian?" Gerald answered on the second ring. "I was just about to call you. I've been reviewing the files you gave me." "And?" He sighed heavily. "It's as bad as you feared, possibly worse." The financial movements definitely indicate laundering activity. Money coming in from sources I can't trace, moving through various accounts and investments associated with his different identities, emerging clean on the other side. How much money are we talking about? Millions. Over 15 years, probably close to $20 million has moved through this network. The number staggered me. That's impossible. We don't live like millionaires. The money isn't staying with any of his families. It's passing through, being cleaned, then moving on to final destinations I can't see from these records. Your husband is just the laundromat, not the end user. But who is the end user? Whose money is he cleaning? That's the million-dollar question, quite literally. But given the elaborate precautions, the multiple identities, the exit strategies, I'd guess someone extremely dangerous. Organized crime, possibly, or international arms dealers. Groups that need to move large sums of money without attracting attention. My blood ran cold. There was a man at our house today. Someone named Reynolds. He was talking to Lawrence about investments, but it felt wrong. Threatening, even. What did he look like? I described Reynolds as best I could, including the partial tattoo I'd noticed. Gerald was silent for a long moment. Vivian, listen to me very carefully. I think it would be best if you didn't go home tonight. The tattoo you described sounds like it could be affiliated with certain criminal organizations. If these people are visiting your husband at home, the situation may be escalating. Fear clutched at my throat. I can't just disappear. What about my children? What about my grandchild? If these people know about them, all the more reason to get somewhere safe and contact the authorities. I have a friend at the FBI who specializes in financial crimes. Let me call him. No, I said firmly, not yet. I need to understand more first. I need to know exactly what Lawrence has gotten us into and how deep it goes. If I go to the FBI now, everything explodes immediately. I need time to protect my family. Time may be a luxury you don't have. If your husband's criminal associates are making house calls, something has changed. The situation may be deteriorating. One more day, I pleaded. Give me one more day to gather information. I'll be careful, I promise. Gerald reluctantly agreed, but insisted I check in with him every few hours. I promised I would, and ended the call, my mind racing with new fears and questions. When I returned home, Lawrence was in his office, door closed, voice murmuring on the phone too quietly for me to make out words. I moved through the kitchen on autopilot, preparing dinner while trying to process everything Gerald had told me. My husband was laundering money for dangerous criminals. He had constructed elaborate alternate identities and families to facilitate this. And now, those criminals were coming to our home, making veiled threats about our family. How had we come to this? How had the man I married, the father who had coached soccer teams and helped with science projects, become entangled with such people? Had he been this person all along, or had he been drawn in gradually, one compromise at a time? Dinner was a silent affair. Lawrence seemed preoccupied, picking at his food without appetite. I watched him across the table, this familiar stranger, wondering what thoughts were churning behind those eyes I thought I knew so well. "I may need to travel soon," he said suddenly. "Business matter that requires personal attention." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Travel where? Phoenix, probably. Maybe Seattle after that. Depends how things develop. He wasn't looking at me, focused instead on cutting his chicken into ever smaller pieces. Phoenix and Seattle. The locations of his other families. Was he planning to visit them? Or was this part of his exit strategy? Collecting resources before disappearing for good? How long would you be gone? I kept my voice casual, though my heart was racing. Hard to say, a week, possibly longer. Camille's due in less than 3 months. You wouldn't want to be away if she goes into labor early. His expression flickered with something I couldn't read. It's important, Viv. I wouldn't consider it otherwise. Important enough to possibly miss the birth of your first grandchild? He set down his knife and fork, finally meeting my gaze. Some things can't be helped. Some commitments can't be broken without consequences. The double meaning in his words was unmistakable. Whatever was happening with his criminal associates, it was reaching a critical point. The pressure was building, and Lawrence was planning his escape. "I see," I said quietly. "When would you leave?" "Tomorrow, possibly, or the next day. I'm waiting on confirmation. So soon, I had even less time than I'd thought. I should pack for you, I offered, desperate to maintain the illusion of normalcy while my mind screamed with alarm. No need. It would just be a short trip. I can manage. He pushed back from the table, his meal barely touched. I have some calls to make. Don't wait up. He disappeared into his office again, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the remains of our dinner. Whatever was happening, it was accelerating. I needed to act quickly if I wanted to protect myself and my children from the fallout of Lawrence's criminal activities. I cleared the table and washed the dishes mechanically, my mind racing through options. If Lawrence left tomorrow, I could use his absence to gather more evidence, maybe even access his office files directly. But if he was planning to disappear permanently rather than just visit his other families, I might never get another chance to confront him, to understand why he had done this to us. The sound of breaking glass jolted me from my thoughts. It had come from Lawrence's office. I hurried down the hall and knocked on the door. Lawrence, is everything all right? No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Lawrence? I heard something break. Still nothing. Fear gripped me as I tried the door. Locked. Lawrence! I called, pounding on the door now. Answer me, or I'm calling 911. The door flew open so suddenly I stumbled backward. Lawrence stood in the doorway, face flushed, eyes wild. Behind him, I could see his desk lamp on the floor, shattered. What happened? I asked, taking another step back from the stranger wearing my husband's face. Nothing. Knocked over the lamp by accident. His voice was tight, controlled with visible effort. Sorry for scaring you. You didn't answer when I called. I was on the phone. Important call. Didn't want to interrupt. I glanced past him into the office. Papers were scattered across the desk and floor, drawers pulled open. It looked like he had been searching for something in a frenzy. Is something wrong? I asked carefully. You seem upset. Everything's fine. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. Just business stress. Nothing for you to worry about. But there was everything to worry about. My husband was laundering money for dangerous criminals. He was planning to leave, possibly forever. And something had him frantic enough to tear apart his usually immaculate office. If you say so. I stepped back, giving him space. I'll be upstairs if you need anything. He nodded distractedly, already turning back to his chaotic office. Thanks, Viv. I retreated upstairs to our bedroom, heart pounding with fear and uncertainty. Through the floor, I could hear Lawrence moving around his office, opening and closing drawers, making occasional phone calls in a voice too low to distinguish words. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd shared for nearly 3 decades, and tried to think. If Lawrence left tomorrow, what would happen to me, to our children, to the grandchild who would never know its grandfather, except as a criminal who had abandoned his family? And what about his other families? Did they know what kind of man they were married to? Were they innocent victims like me, or complicit in his crimes? I needed answers. I needed to understand how my life had become this tangle of lies and danger. But most of all, I needed to protect my family from whatever storm was coming. Tomorrow would be too late. If I wanted answers, I would have to confront Lawrence tonight, while I still could. The thought terrified me, but the alternative, letting him disappear with all his secrets intact, was somehow worse. I would wait until he came to bed. Then I would finally face the stranger I had married and demand the truth about who he really was and what he had done to our family. The confrontation I had planned never happened. Around midnight, I heard Lawrence's office door open, followed by his footsteps moving not toward our bedroom, but down the stairs. I crept to the landing and watched as he pulled a small suitcase from the hall closet, then returned to his office. He was leaving. Tonight. Without even a goodbye. I slipped back to our bedroom and quickly dressed in jeans and a sweater. If Lawrence was running, I needed to know where he was going, what he was planning. I couldn't let him disappear without answers. From the window, I watched as he loaded his suitcase into the trunk of his car around 1 in the morning. He glanced back at the house once, his expression hidden in shadow, before driving away into the night. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my purse, phone, and car keys, then followed him, maintaining a careful distance to avoid detection. This late at night, there were few other cars on the road, making it difficult to stay hidden, but Lawrence seemed preoccupied, never checking his rear-view mirror as he drove steadily north out of town. After nearly an hour, he turned off the highway onto a rural road that wound through farmland. I killed my headlights and followed by moonlight, heart pounding with fear of discovery, but driven by desperate need to know where he was going. The road led eventually to a small private airfield, little more than a strip of asphalt with a couple of hangars and a modular building serving as a terminal. Lawrence parked near one of the hangars where a small plane sat waiting, its engines already running. I pulled over at a distance and watched through binoculars I kept in my glove compartment for bird watching. Lawrence retrieved his suitcase and approached the plane, where a figure emerged to greet him. Even from this distance, I recognized the lean silhouette of Reynolds. They spoke briefly before Lawrence handed over his suitcase, which Reynolds carried into the plane. But instead of boarding himself, Lawrence checked his watch and turned back toward his car. He wasn't leaving yet. He was delivering something to Reynolds, but returning home. I started my car and sped back to the highway, determined to reach home before Lawrence realized I had followed him. The return trip seemed to take forever, each mile stretching with the fear that I would round a bend and find his headlights in my rearview mirror. But I made it home safely, parking where I had been before, and slipping back into the house without evidence of my midnight excursion. Back in bed, still fully clothed beneath the covers, I waited for Lawrence's return, my mind buzzing with questions. What had been in that suitcase? Money? Documents? Why deliver it in the middle of the night to a private airfield? And why was Reynolds involved? I must have dozed despite my racing thoughts, because the next thing I knew, morning light was streaming through the curtains, and Lawrence's side of the bed was still empty. I sat up in confusion, checking the time, 7:30. Lawrence should have been back hours ago. I hurried downstairs, half expecting to find him in the kitchen with his usual breakfast. But the house was silent, empty. His car wasn't in the garage. He hadn't come home. Fear clutched at my throat as I pulled out my phone to call him. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. Where was he? Had he changed his plans and left with Reynolds after all? Or had something gone wrong during his mysterious middle-of-the-night errand? I paced the kitchen, unsure what to do. If Lawrence had willingly disappeared, calling the police would only complicate an already dangerous situation. But if something had happened to him, my phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Unknown number. Hello? I answered tentatively. Mrs. Thorne! The voice was unfamiliar, male, with a slight accent I couldn't place. I believe your husband left something with you for safekeeping. We need it returned immediately. My blood ran cold. Who is this? Where is my husband? Your husband is indisposed at the moment, but his well-being depends entirely on your cooperation. The flash drive, Mrs. Thorne. We know he hid it in your home. The flash drive. The one I had found behind the mirror. The one that had revealed Lawrence's secret lives. I don't know what you're talking about, I lied, mind racing. What flash drive? Please don't waste time with denials. Your husband has already told us where to find it. Behind the decorative mirror, in your master bathroom. We simply need you to confirm it's still there. My breath caught in my throat. How did they know exactly where Lawrence had hidden it unless he had told them? What had they done to make him reveal that information? If you know where it is, why are you calling me? I demanded, fighting to keep my voice steady, because your husband suggested it might have been disturbed recently, moved perhaps, or accessed. They knew. Somehow, they knew I had discovered the flash drive. Had Lawrence told them? Or had they been monitoring our home somehow? I haven't moved anything, I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. I don't snoop through my husband's things. Excellent. Then retrieving it should be simple. We'll send someone to collect it within the hour. You will be there to hand it over personally, and then you'll release my husband. A pause. Then, of course, once we have verified the contents are intact and uncompromised, your husband will be free to return home. Assuming, of course, that you haven't involved the authorities. That would be unfortunate for everyone. I want to speak to Lawrence, I insisted. I want proof he's alive. Mrs. Thorne, the voice hardened, you are not in a position to make demands. 1 hour. Have the drive ready. The call ended, leaving me standing in my kitchen, phone clutched in trembling hands. They had Lawrence. They were coming here, to my home, and they expected me to hand over evidence of my husband's criminal activities in exchange for his life. But the flash drive was still behind the mirror, exactly where I'd found it. I had only copied its contents to my laptop. If I gave them the original drive, would they know I'd seen its contents? Would they let Lawrence go, or would they eliminate both of us as liabilities? I had less than an hour to decide what to do. Call the police and risk Lawrence's life? Hand over the drive and hope these criminals kept their word? Or was there a third option, some way to protect both my husband and myself from the consequences of his actions? One thing was certain. I couldn't face these people alone. With shaking fingers, I dialed Gerald's number. Vivian? He answered on the first ring. I was getting worried when you didn't check in last night. They have Lawrence, I said without preamble. They're coming here in an hour for the flash drive. They know I found it. Jesus Christ. Gerald's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. Get out of that house right now. Go to a public place, somewhere with lots of witnesses. I'm calling my FBI contact immediately. I can't. If I run, they'll kill Lawrence. Vivian, listen to me. These people don't leave witnesses. If they know you've seen what's on that drive, they won't let you live, regardless of whether you cooperate. His words confirmed my worst fears. Then, what do? I can't just let them kill my husband. Gerald was silent for a moment. Is there any way you could make a copy of the drive? Give them the original, but keep the evidence? I already copied the contents to my laptop. Good. That's good. Is there a way you could make it look like you never found the drive? Like it's been undisturbed this whole time? I thought about the mirror, the small depression in the wall behind it. Maybe. If I return it exactly as it was, do that. Then get your laptop and any other evidence out of the house. Hide it somewhere they won't look. When they come for the drive, act completely ignorant. Pretend you have no idea what's going on. Your only concern is your missing husband. And then what? And then we hope they believe you, take the drive, and leave. Meanwhile, I'll have my FBI contact monitoring your house. As soon as they leave with the drive, we'll track them. That should lead us to Lawrence. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than nothing. Okay, I'll call you back after they leave. If they leave. They will. Just remember, your only goal is to survive the next few hours. Everything else can be dealt with later. I hung up and immediately went to work. First, I carefully replaced the flash drive behind the mirror, positioning it exactly as I'd found it originally. Then I packed my laptop, the handwritten notes I'd made, and Gerald's business card into a small backpack, which I hid in the garden shed behind a stack of empty flower pots. Back in the house, I erased all browser history and any other digital traces of my investigation from our home computer. Then I cleared any signs that Lawrence had been packing or planning to leave. If these people thought he had been preparing to run, they might assume I knew more than I was letting on. Finally, I changed into a comfortable but unremarkable outfit and fixed my hair and makeup to look presentable, but not as if I was expecting company. I needed to appear like a worried wife whose husband hadn't come home, not someone waiting for dangerous criminals to arrive. The doorbell rang at exactly 58 minutes after the phone call. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and went to answer it, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would give me away. 2 men stood on my porch. One was Reynolds, looking exactly as he had during his previous visit. The other was a stockier man with close-cropped hair and cold eyes that assessed me with clinical detachment. "Mrs. Thorne," Reynolds greeted me with that same predatory smile. "May we come in?" "Where's my husband?" I demanded, not moving from the doorway. "He didn't come home last night." "That's actually why we're here," Reynolds said smoothly. "To help locate your husband. May we come in and discuss this privately?" I hesitated, then stepped aside reluctantly. "Fine. But I want answers." They entered my home with the confident ease of men who feared no consequences. Reynolds led the way to the living room, while his companion remained near the door, watching me with unblinking focus. "Your husband borrowed something valuable from my associates," Reynolds explained once we were seated. "We need it returned immediately." "I don't know anything about my husband's business," I said, infusing my voice with genuine fear and confusion. "If he borrowed something from you, you'll have to ask him when he gets home." "The item is in your home, Mrs. Thorne. A small storage device containing sensitive information. Your husband indicated it was hidden behind a decorative mirror in your bathroom." I frowned, the picture of bewilderment. Why would Lawrence hide something in our bathroom? That makes no sense. Perhaps to keep it from prying eyes, or perhaps because it was a convenient hiding place in a moment of panic. Regardless, we need to retrieve it now. "So you broke into our home while we were sleeping and hid something behind our mirror?" I asked incredulously. "That's insane. And illegal." Reynolds sighed, his patience visibly thinning. "Mrs. Thorne, I don't think you understand the gravity of your situation. Your husband has been working with my organization for many years. Recently, he made some concerning decisions that have put all of us at risk. We need to contain that risk immediately." "By breaking into my home and making threats?" "Where is my husband?" "Your husband is safe, for now. His continued safety depends entirely on our recovering that storage device without further complications." Reynolds nodded to his companion, who moved toward the stairs. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we'll retrieve our property and be on our way." "Wait!" I stood up, blocking his path. "You can't just search my home without permission. I'll call the police." Reynolds moved with unexpected speed, gripping my arm with painful force. "That would be extremely unwise, Mrs. Thorne. For you and for your husband, but especially for your daughter and her unborn child." The threat hung in the air between us, crystalline in its clarity and malice. These men knew about Camille. They knew where she lived, that she was pregnant. They could reach my family at any time. "Fine," I whispered, my defiance crumbling under the weight of fear for my loved ones. "Take whatever you came for and leave us alone." Reynolds released my arm with a satisfied nod. "A wise decision. Wait here with Mrs. Thorne," he instructed his companion. "I'll only be a moment." He ascended the stairs with purpose, clearly familiar with the layout of my home. His associate positioned himself between me and both the front door and the stairs, effectively cutting off any escape route. We waited in tense silence, the only sound the distant opening and closing of doors as Reynolds searched upstairs. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, he returned, holding the flash drive in his gloved hand. Found it," he announced, his expression revealing nothing about whether he suspected it had been discovered and returned to its hiding place. "We'll be going now, Mrs. Thorne." "Thank you for your cooperation." "And my husband?" I asked, voice trembling with genuine fear. "When will he be home?" Reynolds pocketed the drive and adjusted his suit jacket. "Soon, assuming this contains exactly what we expect." Someone will contact you with further instructions. Further instructions? I thought once you had your property, this would be over. Nothing is ever quite that simple, Mrs. Thorne. But for now, sit tight and wait for our call. And remember, his voice dropped to a menacing murmur, we know where your daughter lives. We know where your son works. We're watching. Any contact with authorities will have immediate and irreversible consequences for your family. With that final threat, they left, the door closing behind them with a quiet click that sounded absurdly normal given the circumstances. I waited, frozen in place, until I heard their car pull away from the curb. Then I collapsed onto the sofa, my legs suddenly unable to support me. They had the flash drive. They had Lawrence. And they still weren't done with my family. What had Lawrence gotten us into? And more importantly, how were we going to get out of it alive? I gave them 10 minutes to clear the area before retrieving my laptop from the garden shed and calling Gerald. They're gone, I told him when he answered. They took the flash drive and said they'd call with further instructions. They threatened my children, Gerald, my pregnant daughter. Are you safe? Did they harm you? No, I'm fine. Terrified, but unharmed. Did your FBI contact see them leave? Yes. They're being tracked now. With any luck, they'll lead us straight to their organization and to your husband. But Vivian, you can't stay in that house. If they've been watching you, they may know you've been investigating. It's too dangerous. Where am I supposed to go? They said they're watching my children. If I suddenly disappear, they might hurt Lawrence or go after Camille. Go about your normal routine, but pack a bag and be ready to leave at a moment's notice. My FBI contact will have agents positioned near your children's homes for protection. As soon as we locate Lawrence, they'll move in and secure your entire family. It wasn't much comfort, but it was something. At least my children wouldn't be unprotected while we waited for this nightmare to play out. What do I do now? I asked, feeling lost in the vastness of this conspiracy that had swallowed my life. Act normal. If they call, answer, but reveal nothing. Keep your phone with you at all times so we can track your location. And Vivian, his voice grew grave, prepare yourself for the possibility that Lawrence may not be the victim here. He may be a willing participant who got in over his head. I know, I whispered, the admission painful, even after everything I'd learned. The man I thought I married wouldn't do this to his family. I don't know who Lawrence really is anymore. After hanging up, I moved through the house mechanically, straightening furniture, washing breakfast dishes I hadn't used, maintaining the illusion of normalcy for any watching eyes. My mind, meanwhile, raced with questions and fears. Would they really release Lawrence once they confirmed the flash drive was intact? What were the further instructions Reynolds had mentioned? And most troubling of all, if Lawrence came home, what then? Could I ever look at him the same way, knowing what he had done, the danger he had brought to our door? The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. I called Camille to check on her, my voice carefully modulated to hide my terror, making up a story about Lawrence being called away suddenly for a client emergency. I texted Preston with a casual inquiry about his weekend plans, normal mother things, as if my world hadn't been shattered beyond recognition. Evening fell with no word from either Reynolds or Gerald. I prepared dinner I couldn't eat, watched television I couldn't focus on, and jumped at every sound from outside, wondering if it was Lawrence returning or his criminal associates coming back with more threats. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered with trembling fingers. Hello? Mrs. Thorne! It was the same accented voice from earlier. Your husband will be returning home shortly. When he arrives, you will both pack essential items only. You will then await further instructions. Is that clear? Yes, I managed to say. But where are we going? Why do we need to pack? Your husband will explain. Be ready to leave within the hour. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the phone in confusion and dread. They were sending Lawrence home, but only to collect me. We were being taken somewhere together. But where? And why? I quickly called Gerald to relay this new development. "This is good, Sakai," he said, surprising me. "If they're bringing Lawrence to you, it means they still need something from both of you. It gives us time to track your movements and plan an extraction." Extraction? You make it sound like we're spies in a hostile country. In a sense, you are. These people have been operating a sophisticated money laundering network for years. They have resources, connections, and absolutely no compunction about eliminating threats. The fact that they're keeping you alive means they believe you have value. We need to use that to our advantage. So I just go along with whatever they say. Let them take us to some unknown location. For now, yes. Keep your phone with you no matter what. Even if they take it later, having it during the initial transport will help us track your direction. And Vivian, his voice softened, when you see Lawrence, follow his lead. If he pretends you know nothing, play along. Your life may depend on it. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the living room wall as a car pulled into our driveway. I peered through the curtains to see Lawrence emerging from the back seat of a black sedan, the same one Reynolds had arrived in earlier. He looked haggard, his normally immaculate appearance rumpled, a dark bruise visible on his cheekbone, even in the dim porch light. Reynolds accompanied him to the door, one hand firmly gripping Lawrence's elbow in what looked like guidance but was clearly restraint. I opened the door before they could knock, my eyes locked on my husband's face, searching for any clue about what I should do or say. "Viv," Lawrence said, his voice hoarse, "pack a bag. Essentials only. We need to leave soon." Reynolds released him with a small push that sent Lawrence stumbling slightly across the threshold. "1 hour," he reminded us. "I'll be waiting outside." The door closed, leaving me alone with the stranger I had married. For a long moment, we stared at each other in silence, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between us like a physical barrier. "Are you hurt?" I asked finally, gesturing to the bruise on his face. "I'm fine." He glanced toward the windows nervously. "We should pack." "They're watching." "Lawrence," I began, but he shook his head sharply, placing a finger against his lips. Then he gestured for me to follow him upstairs. In our bedroom, he immediately turned on the shower in our bathroom, then returned and whispered, "They might have listening devices. We need to be careful what we say." "Who are these people?" I whispered back. "What have you done?" Pain flashed across his face. "I'm so sorry, Viv. I never meant for any of this to touch you. I thought I had it under control." Under control? Laundering money for criminals? Living multiple lives with multiple families? That was under control? His eyes widened in shock. "You know." "How long have you known?" "Since Fiona told me to look behind the mirror. I found your flash drive, Lawrence. I saw everything." He closed his eyes briefly, his expression one of pure despair. "Then you understand how dangerous these people are. We need to cooperate, at least until I can figure out a way to protect you and the children." "Protect us?" "You're the one who put us in danger in the first place." I kept my voice low, but couldn't contain the fury and betrayal that had been building since I'd discovered his deception. "I know, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for that. But right now, we need to focus on surviving the next 24 hours. He moved to our closet and began pulling out clothes. "Pack warm things." "Where they're taking us, it will be cold." "Where exactly are they taking us? And why?" Lawrence paused, a sweater clutched in his hands. "To clean up loose ends." "The operation is being shut down. Too much heat from various agencies. They're eliminating all connections that could lead back to the organization." "Eliminating?" The word sent ice through my veins. "You mean killing people." "Not us," he said quickly. "Not if we cooperate." "They need me to help transfer remaining assets through one final series of transactions. After that, if we've been useful and haven't caused problems, they'll relocate us. New identities, new lives, and my children? Are they just supposed to believe we disappeared, never see their parents again? Lawrence looked away, unable to meet my eyes. It's the only way to keep them safe. If these people think they can use them as leverage against us, they will. The cleaner the break, the safer Camille and Preston will be. I stared at my husband, this man I thought I had known so intimately, and saw a complete stranger. How did you get involved with these people? How does someone go from being a normal financial advisor to laundering money for criminals? It didn't happen all at once, he said quietly. It started small. A client with cash that needed to be invested discreetly, then larger amounts that required more creative solutions. By the time I realized how deep I was, there was no way out. They made that very clear. And the other families? The other wives? Were they part of your money laundering scheme or just collateral damage in your secret life? Pain flashed across his face. I never meant to hurt anyone. The other identities were necessary for the financial infrastructure, the relationships. They just happened. Human connections in the midst of all the deception. They just happened, I repeated, disgust coloring my voice. 27 years of marriage, 2 children, and now a grandchild on the way, and you've been living multiple lives that just happened. Viv, please, I know you have every right to hate me, but right now, we need to focus on surviving this, on making sure Camille and Preston remain safe. There will be time for recriminations later. Will there? Because from where I'm standing, our future looks rather bleak. Either these criminals kill us, or we spend the rest of our lives on the run with new identities, never seeing our children again. Neither option seems particularly appealing. Lawrence zipped up his suitcase with finality. There might be another way. But I can't discuss it here. Not now. Please, just pack your things. And Viv? His voice dropped even lower. Did you tell anyone about what you found? About any of this? I thought of Gerald, of his FBI contact currently tracking Reynolds's car, of the agent supposedly watching over my children. Should I tell Lawrence about my own plans, my own attempt to find a way out of this nightmare? Or was he too deeply entangled with these criminals to be trusted? In that moment, looking into the eyes of the man who had betrayed me in ways I was still struggling to comprehend, I made my decision. No, I lied smoothly. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe something this insane? Relief washed over his face. Good? That's good. It's safer that way. As I packed my suitcase with mechanical efficiency, I wondered if Lawrence believed my lie as easily as I had believed his for all these years. And I wondered, with a chill that had nothing to do with our unknown destination, which of us had become the better deceiver.